Welcome to Knattering with the Knights, North Anglia International School Hong Kong's PE department, talking about sport, physical activity, health and a host of other topics.
Hello and welcome back to episode 3 of Knattering with the Knights. My name is Mr Erskine. Our episode today is hosted by Miss Stephanie Jones once again, and she sits down with another one of our PE teachers, Mr Deri Reid, as they talk about injuries. Now, both of our staff have had the unfortunate experience of some pretty serious injuries. Mr Reid just this year in February underwent hip resurfacing surgery, which is the same procedure that nearly ended the career of tennis player Andy Murray. As a result, he now has a titanium part in his hip, and he'll talk a little bit more about that in the episode. Miss Jones unfortunately suffered 2 major knee injuries which she had to have surgery on, and one of them was here in Hong Kong. Both Miss Jones and Mr Reid share insights into how these injuries impacted on their daily lives and their teaching careers as well. It's a great episode to showcase some of the skills needed when you need to overcome a challenge and also building resilience. So put your earphones in, get out and get active, and enjoy the episode.
Welcome to episode 3 of Knattering with the Knights. I'm Miss Jones, and this week I sit down with Mr Reid to discuss injuries and recovery. The human body is an incredible thing. It allows us to do so many things. It allows us to breathe and feel, it allows us to heal, and it is constantly dealing with the challenges we put it through. Something many of us have experienced is an injury, whether that was through an accident or through sport. We know that there are a wide range of injuries, some as mild as cuts and bruising to a pulled muscle. Some more serious injuries include concussion and broken bones. If you type most common sporting injury into Google, the first hit is knee injuries, followed by shoulder injuries. In today's episode, I sit down with Mr Reid to discuss our own experiences with injuries and how we dealt with the recovery process. We will also cover how these injuries may have impacted our lives and how we've learned to deal with not only the physical challenges of an injury, but the mental challenges as well. An episode that involves some storytelling and reflections on personal challenges with injuries. It also highlights the importance of developing a growth mindset and how changing your perspective can increase and improve your recovery. Firstly, welcome to Mr Reid.
Hello, Miss Jones.
Hi, now I'm going to jump right in, as I don't know whether many students know about your most recent experience with an injury and your recovery, as this all occurred during our first virtual school experience back in February. Do you mind sharing with our listeners the procedure you underwent back in February?
Yep, no problem, although probably quite a few people do know about it because I tried to make it known, particularly my family. Back in February, just before the school closed, I underwent quite a large surgical procedure to have my hip resurfaced. So not a full hip replacement, but it was a resurfacing procedure. So essentially you could call it the first stage of having a hip replacement.
Okay, so to have a procedure as big as that in terms of contemplating needing to replace a part of your hip, how did it get to that stage? What caused the problems that you were experiencing?
Well, it's actually quite a common thing that particularly males experience, and it kind of got to the stage where I was in discomfort on a daily basis, where I couldn't do the normal things. Although you'd see me walking around at school, you would have thought nothing of it, but actually there was quite a lot of soreness, a lot of pain at night, particularly trying to sleep, so it was affecting my sleep, which kind of led to the decision that I had to do something about it, which then I sought out professional help and advice, which then started the process of discussing my options as to what I needed to do to get rid of or decrease the discomfort and the pain.
So when you're having those kind of conversations with a surgeon or a medical specialist, how did you come to the decision that this would be the right decision for you? Bearing in mind that, you know, you're a very active man, you teach PE, like it's quite a big decision to go under quite a life-changing surgery. Yeah,
I mean, it wasn't a decision that I immediately made straight away, and I kind of lived with the discomfort and the pain and the injury for over a year. Not that anyone would have known that apart from my family, of course, because I used to moan to them about it all the time. But yeah, I tried. In fact, I saw a specialist. My first specialist I saw actually advised me straight away to have my hip resurfaced, or he actually said you need a hip replacement, which then shocked me because I actually thought I just had a strain in my groin. And I then spoke to many people, friends, family, people that I thought that would give me some good advice, and which led me to finding out another specialist. And we went on this journey together to try to then go through the options of what I would do. And surgery would be my final option. So I underwent different exercises, physio regimes, had injections, painkillers, anti-inflammatories, and so on to try and limit or try and actually see if my body would heal and recover, which it didn't, which then led me to the last option, which was the surgery. And it was down to me to choose when to have it. It was I could have carried on without it, but the fact is my quality of life, I think that was the advice that my surgeon gave me. He said, once you realise that your quality of life isn't the same as what it should be or has been, that's probably the sign to then act upon it and undergo the surgery that they were advising.
Okay, so you've kind of thought through everything, you've exhausted all your options, and you're now making the decision to have surgery. You obviously have a successful operation, but now we've got a whole other challenge to face, which is the recovery process. Were you advised beforehand, like how long it would take to recover from this process? And could you maybe talk us through your experiences of your recovery from such a big surgery?
Yeah. So the specialist that I was seeing was very frank and upfront, and he said that it's quite a severe procedure that they do. It's I've been left with quite a big scar and a piece of my body replaced, so it shouldn't be taken lightly. But also, what I really liked about the surgeon that I was seeing, that he actually said to me, he's very aggressive with his physiotherapy, putting you back on the road to recovery. But in terms of just getting myself back on my feet and walking around again, I was up the following day. But then thereafter, I need to follow like a 4-week, very light physio training program to try and get the mobility back and the range of movement back in my joint. And then it was broken into another 4 weeks. Then you could start applying more weight, like weight bearing exercises onto it. The one thing that I haven't done properly, and I am about to embark back on it, is running. So that was the one thing that I was advised not to do, to try and let the joint itself and the actual bone, like the femur bone that the prosthetic is attached to, because there's a chance of it splitting, which then would result with me having to have a full hip replacement. Okay. So running, although it isn't out of the question, it will be. I'm looking to start it again at the end of September. Hopefully, then with the weather being slightly cooler as well. But other than that, I was advised to do anything I wanted in terms of within reason. So cycling, swimming, light weights, lots of things that would help build back the muscle, particularly like the quadricep and the glutes around the joint. So realistically, 6 months recovery, full recovery, and then I can start doing exercise that you would deem as in back to full fitness. So 6 months.
So 6 months to most of us, even to the most active people, is a long time to kind of process and take in that there are steps that you're going to have to follow, and even at the 6 month mark you still might not be able to do the things that you once were able to do before. How do you kind of mentally deal with that? I mean, physically you're waiting for your body to heal and you're helping it the best way you can, but you're obviously dealing with this in a mental perspective as well. How do you kind of coach yourself or make the situation the best you can so that you don't kind of get any negative aspects of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting really, because I think, this isn't the first time that I've been injured. It's the biggest operation I've ever had. But it's always, I don't know, I always feel quite anxious and nervous about post-operation, because I can't then do the things that I want to do. Like just going for a walk, or I fancy going for a run, or I fancy doing a different type of training today. Just things like that. You have to kind of put to the back of your mind and then think about it differently in terms of, well, I can still train or I can still recover, but I need to make sure that I've put the correct steps in place in order so I don't get injured and like the specialist said, give myself long-term damage, which then is potentially irreversible, particularly as I haven't had the full hip replacement.
Okay. Now, there's quite an impressive documentary on Amazon Prime about Andy Murray, the tennis player, who is probably one of the most well-known athletes to have actually undergone this procedure. And we see him battle through his recovery process in terms of trying to make a comeback to tennis. Now, for you, did you have any kind of goals or any achievements that you wanted to make to come back from this surgery, or are you just taking it as, from a health perspective, this is a longevity thing? You want to make sure that your joints are healthy for the rest of your life?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me now, the message that I would say that it's about sustainability, trying to sustain, again, quality of life, sustaining a healthy, active lifestyle. As I always jokingly say, it happens to the best athletes. So this is why, after watching the Andy Murray documentary, which is great and so interesting, I found, although I didn't watch it until after I had the procedure, I knew it existed, but I didn't want to watch it because it actually does show you on there the procedure itself. So I didn't want to see what actually happened to me whilst I was fast asleep. So I think a week or so before I actually had the operation, I went out for a hike with my family and friends, and it was at that point really during that hike where I thought, right, I've made the right decision to have it, because I actually couldn't complete the hike. I actually had to stop and say to my friends and my family, I think I might need to get a taxi. And it just felt quite demoralising for me, because I consider myself as quite an active person, as you said, PE teacher. Quite a competitive person, and just feel that I can get up and go and do something. And it was at that point where it was like, I just felt useless, I suppose, in that situation. And I felt it was coming back from that, or that point there. I was like, well, once I've had the operation, I know that it's not going to beat me. I'm then going to get myself back in shape and make sure that I've put all the things in place to ensure that I can do that again. Because I'm I might be slightly old, but I'm not really old at the moment.
Well, you're Mr PE man, aren't you? That's how you're well known within our school as Mr PE man. Now, you mentioned there about some kind of almost coming back from it and getting back to full health. And that could be a challenge. Some people could really have difficulty with that. And obviously recovering from a big procedure, as we've talked about, and, like you said, having to learn to take steps again and almost trust this new part of your body. Could you maybe take us through and explain like some of the biggest challenges that you faced and how you tackled them?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge after I'd had the operation was not rushing into trying to get myself back to fitness straight away.
Yeah.
Typically, it's funny because I actually did that 2 days after the surgery itself, where the surgeon said to me, you can leave hospital once we've got you on a walking stick. So, of course, once I'd had the operation, I was on crutches. I had to have crutches because I couldn't put weight on my left leg. But as soon as the surgeon said to me, we'll let you go home once you can use a walking stick properly, I was straight away asking the physio department for a walking stick because I wanted to show them that I was, as you say, PE man, and I can go home, as soon as possible. But having reflected on that, I was like, right, let's take the advice of the professionals. They know what they're talking about, and then that resulted with me being in hospital for another 5 days. Well, for 5 days, where I took my time. That was the first kind of steps to recovery, and then once I had my walking stick, I was allowed home. And then once I'd seen the surgeon after I'd left the hospital, and he gave me the thumbs up to be aggressive with my physio, that's when I started, making sure that every morning once I woke up, I was doing my exercises straight away, making sure that I was walking around where I lived, 2 or 3 times a day with the stick. I had to have the stick for 6 weeks. I wasn't allowed not to have the stick. Right. So again, I felt, at the end of the second week, I don't need the walking stick anymore. And, Mrs Reid would catch me around the house or the apartment without the stick, and she'd tell me off because obviously I needed the stick. But yeah, that was like my first real step of getting myself back to health, to fitness. And then obviously after that, after the 4 to 6 week mark, I could then start doing more aggressive exercises, lose the walking stick, and start actually walking at a faster pace and up and down steps much easier, and not worry about the thought of falling over and doing myself further injury. I mean, I think it's important to say that I was also very lucky at the time, because although we obviously are experiencing an unusual year with unusual circumstances where we haven't been at school or at work, this happened right at the same time where all the schools did close. Mm-hmm. It was never planned, but it then gave me extra time or an extra kind of cushion to work on my physio. So I wasn't having to come into work or physically actually do my PE lessons. I was able to operate remotely from home, whilst also, continuing with my physio and rehab.
So I suppose, in a way, when you're recovering from surgery and you're going through the rehab process, you almost probably have to be a little bit selfish and consider, that you need to take this time for yourself. There are many people that we come across, our students as well, that, they could face an injury. What advice would you give to anyone listening to this podcast that may be facing an injury? They may, we hope no one gets injured, but if they were to get an injury, how would you advise them to kind of approach that injury to make sure that they can come out of it better and that they don't hinder any plans that they made?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose everyone's experiences are different, but for me, the advice that I was given, as I said earlier on, like when my surgeon said to me, when it's time, because the quality of your life won't be what it usually is. That was the advice that I took on board. And then for me, that's what motivated me to then get back to how things were. In terms of, for our listeners, for our students, I mean, I've had other injuries in the past, and I've always actually been quite careful in terms of when a pupil or student talks about being injured. I'm always very conscious of making sure that they've gone through the correct steps to make sure that they've been diagnosed with whatever it is that's happened to them, seeking the advice of the professionals, and then making sure that they don't rush back to wanting to play for their school team or their teams outside of school, or whatever it is that they do, and make sure that they don't then give themselves a long-term problems as they go into adulthood. So it's just, for me, it would be take the advice of the professionals, make sure that you follow the guidance in terms of the physio that you're given, the exercises you're given, and don't rush back, because there's no rush when it comes to looking after your body. Shortly after you joined the school, you also had quite a big injury to deal with, didn't you?
Yeah, I unfortunately in February of 2019 suffered an ACL tear. So I fully ripped the ligament that holds my leg muscles together in two. And I unfortunately found out that I had to have surgery. I had previously had this surgery on my left knee 5 years ago. So I was kind of aware of what the process and the procedure was going to be, but I would agree with what you said here in terms of basically following a professional protocol and making sure you listen to what your physio and your doctors say. I, like you said as well, tried to rush things in my first procedure. So the first operation I had 5 years ago was the same one, but on my left knee, and I wanted to get back to going to the gym. I wanted to get back to teaching my lessons without using crutches, and I did rush the recovery phase, and it delayed the amount of time that it took me to actually return to full health. So the second time round, learning from my mistakes, I learned to take it easy, and I learned to listen to my body. If my knee was hurting or my leg muscles were tired, because one of the big issues with a knee surgery is the muscle wastage. So my thigh muscles shrunk, they weren't as strong as they used to be. So just walking a few steps, walking up and down steps was very challenging. So this time round, I listened to my body, and it took me actually less time to recover by listening to what I was being told to do.
Yeah. I think, the knee is an interesting part of the body because, again, like you, I've also had surgery on my knees, both of them. But I also, just thinking about the students, when I was younger, I had lots of problems with my knees, and it's now really that I've taken that into teaching, and whenever pupils complain about sore knees or something not being right, as you said earlier, what advice would I give? It's listen to your body and make sure that you follow it up with going to see a professional or speak to someone, and then follow their advice, because what you don't want is to give yourself long-term damage, as you've experienced and I've experienced elsewhere on my body. But you obviously you wouldn't see that normally. What with us being young, fit athletes.
I think that's a good point, though, that you make about now. If you don't know us, if you're new to the school, or you weren't aware that we have undergone these procedures, and there are more PE teachers in the office that have had surgeries due to sporting injuries or otherwise, is that if you do recover well and you approach it with the right attitude, it is almost like it never happened. I mean, we all have a few scars to remind us of what we've been through. But I actually think my scars now are something that I'm proud of. It's a big challenge that I had to go through. I remember having to sit on the sidelines and watch my friends do competitions that I should have been a part of. But due to my injuries, I had to sit out and be the cheerleader. But now, looking down at both knees and seeing the scars, I actually can see what I've come from. And I actually think now I'm a better athlete than I was prior to my knee surgeries. I think because I'm more aware of what my joints and my body needs, I'm a bit more respectful of that. So I actually feel the strongest that I've ever been and the healthiest that I've ever been. So I now reflect on my injuries as a bit of a blessing. It taught me something, and I hope that we, with our injuries in our lessons, can make sure that our students are aware of these things, that an injury doesn't last forever.
Yeah, definitely. I think, as I said, like when I was younger and I was at school, I definitely didn't follow the advice of anyone, and I just continued, which obviously led to my problems in later life, particularly with my knees. But now, as you said, Miss Jones, it definitely does teach you how to respect your body and learn about how the body moves and works, and it kind of it puts you closer in touch with it, I think, in terms of what you can and can't do, or what your limitations are, or not, as the case may be, and you actually become better from it. So yeah.
Well, I think we will round up our conversation there. It's been a very interesting topic for us, and we discuss it a lot in the PE office about injuries that we've faced and how we overcome them. Just remember, like we said, if you are feeling like you are suffering with an injury or something doesn't feel right, seek medical advice and follow that to the letter. And obviously don't push yourselves if you are feeling like a muscle tightness or a strain, or you're not even feeling very well. Take the time to let your body recover and relax, because you will be grateful for it. Well, thank you for sitting down with me today, Mr. Reid. We hope you enjoy this episode, and we will see you on episode 4 for some more information from Knattering with the Knights.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Knattering with the Knights. If you want to make sure that you don't miss any future episodes, then please subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Please reach out to your PE teacher if you have any feedback or ideas about topics you would like to see and hear about in the future. In the meantime, have a great week, and we will see you next time.